So, good morning everybody. I welcome you to the first out of 3 sessions on mobility today. This first session will be mainly about the EduRoam project in the research network community. The next subsequent session also in this room will be about large-scale wireless LAN deployments. And the last of these 3 sessions this afternoon, also in this room, will be about future trends and directions in mobility. So, our first session is dedicated to practical deployment experiences and projects, and it is my pleasure to welcome Klaas Vierenga as a first speaker. He's been actively involved in the EduRoam project at Surfnet, Netherlands, and I believe he will tell us all the details in a second.
Yes, it works. Good morning, everyone. What I will do actually, what I will do is not go into a lot of details about EduRoam. Especially when I now look around, I see also lots of familiar faces. I do have, however, a pile of EduRoam leaflets that we have prepared. So if you are not completely familiar with EduRoam yet, then stop by later and I'm very happy to explain it into all the details you might want, or perhaps not even that, and give you a leaflet. What I'm going to do today in this first half hour is basically give a very short overview of what EduRoam is and where we are at the moment. And the second half, more or less, of my presentation will be dedicated to what is not perfect yet. And the good thing, for me at least, is that I will mainly provide questions and not answers. And that's because I'm in the fortunate position that I'm the first speaker in a series of talks, and also tomorrow there will be two sessions dedicated to the AAI infrastructure for Europe, where a lot of the things I will be touching on will be dealt with. So I'm just more or less giving you the soft introduction to it, and then for the hard details and hopefully some answers, other people will come in. So, what is this EduRoam in 3 slides? 4 perhaps. It is all about users becoming more and more mobile. What we see in our environment, and you for sure see in your environments as well, is that users start to move around, and being the demanding users they want to have easy connectivity. So they go from the wireless LAN at their university, they go to another university, they go home, they're in the train, they're in the bus, they go abroad to take a course at a university in another country, and everywhere they want to get online. So what did that mean in the early days? Let's say the BE, the before EduRoam era. You had to go to a computing center, an administrative unit, whatever, and you had to provide some details, show your student card, your passport, whatever, and they would create an account for you. The problem is that is for us techies usually not that hard. That is, at least that in my experience. I usually know the people at a computing center, so I say, give me quickly an account, I need to get online, stuff like that. For the average user, that is a very tedious procedure. So this is all what EduRoam is about. EduRoam is about creating a middleware layer that makes it possible for a user to use their home credentials to get online somewhere else. Then one slide that goes a bit into the technology. What are the key factors that form this EduRoam architecture? Well, first of all, security is mainly based on the 802.1x standard. I put between brackets or web-based redirect. I will come back to that in a bit. But the majority of the institutions connected to EduRoam in Europe and abroad use 802.1x, and that is a security standard, IEEE security standard, or actually an umbrella standard that encompasses a lot of underlying technologies that provides what you could call identity-based networking. You know who is getting onto your network. So if things go wrong, you know who to take by the ear, but also based on this identity, you could ask back at the home institution of the user, is this a valid user? You can, as I said, it is an umbrella standard, so you can use different authentication methods. Basically, whatever you feel like. What the authentication method that is in use at your institution, you can in principle use on top of 802.1x. So username, password, software certificates, hardware tokens, even one-time passwords via SMS, stuff like that. It is in principle all possible. It's just a matter of you have to do it. A number of these methods are defined and you can just use out of the box. Otherwise you would have to create one yourself. The good thing is, if you do enable roaming, the fact that you use a particular authentication method doesn't mean that the institution you are visiting has to use it as well. It's all encapsulated in 802.1x, so it just gets transported home, and that's the only institution that has to deal with your particular authentication type. It prevents session hijacking. I put this specifically there because that is the one thing that I believe makes the majority, if not all, of the web-based systems weak. This idea that you go to some kind of web page, enter your credentials, and you get online. That's what all the commercial wireless operators typically do. You enter your credit card details and you get online. Well, it is very hard to prevent that someone sniffs the traffic and thinks, that's a valid IP and MAC address combination. Let me just take that. I send a denial of service attack to the original owner of that IP address and MAC address, configure it, and I'm in. And then you could say, so what? But what if that person then sends in tons of spam or child pornography or starts hacking into systems? Then you might reconsider the so what that you've said first. It can do mutual authentication. I will come back to that in 2 slides, so I will not mention it now. And it does protect, again, using 802.1x, you can protect your credentials. Web-based, it's hard. Not undoable, but hard. If you use 802.1x, you can make sure that the only places where you can see, let's say, the username password is at the client system, the laptop of the user, and the home institution. No one else can see the username and passwords. And a very nice feature is that the dynamic VLAN assignment, 802.1q, for the techies among us, which I suppose are all of us, is very easily to be integrated with 802.1x. So based on the identity of someone, you can put them in a different network. that is one of the reasons why most institutions feel comfortable with allowing guests on their campus, because you just put your guest in a different VLAN. They will not be able to get to your printers, to your online systems. They will just be able to get on the internet, and that's it. As just to make you feel even more comfortable about this, all these new wireless security standards that are coming into place, WPA, Wireless Protected Access, 802.11i, nowadays also called WPA2, they all are based on the same 802.1x standard with some addition, better encryption, stuff like that. But going 802.1x is a safe way forward. So that was the security part. Then the roaming part, and that's after all why we do this. That is based on the Radius protocol. Radius stands for Remote Authentication Dial-In User Service, which was originally created for these dial-up networks, where you would phone into a phone number and get access. The username and password would typically be checked against a Radius server. Very old, relatively easy, well understood, many implementations out there, and for a lot of people that the fact that it's old means that we should look for something new. The big advantage is it works, and that is something that is not a given in a lot of systems. And then the third, and probably in the end the most important part of it, is the trust that gets established. You have to think a bit about this. You are letting people on to your network because an institution in a country on the other side of the world says, yes, please let this person on. Then you really have to trust that if something goes wrong, that there is a way to deal with it. Well, this trust is based on two things. A technical part, these Radius servers that all the institutions deploy are connected to higher level Radius servers that are in turn connected to another higher level of Radius, and they on every link they exchange a secret that basically says, I know who you are, you know who I am, so if you send me something, I trust that. So that's the technical part of it. Of course, there also needs to be a policy part, and that is just a bunch of documents that says, if I say that my user is okay, I also take responsibility for this user if something goes wrong. Stuff like that. I will not say, yes, this is a valid user if it's not true. I will make sure that I do a good user administration. All these kind of things. Procedures to resolve incidents, stuff like that. That is all based on contracts, or to be more precise, is going to be based on contracts, because this is the part we have been a bit sloppy about so far. We have been concentrating on getting this thing working and as fast as possible roll out. Now we have to stand back a little bit, think about it, and make this better. So, in all my presentations I use this slide, so I thought I cannot do without it this time. This, in a nutshell, this shows how a typical guest that gets access, how the whole process works. So we're talking about a guy called Piet from University B in the Netherlands that tries to get access to the wireless network. The access point forwards the credentials of the users. Remember, they're encrypted, so the access point can't see the credentials. It can only see the institution the user claims to belong to. In this case, University B. The access point knows about one Radius server, the Radius server of its own institution, and asks that, I have here a set of credentials, can you please say yes or no whether this is a valid user? In this case, since it's a University B user, University A cannot say anything about it. They don't know about University A use. The only thing they do is, instead of going to their own user database to verify them, they proxy it, they send it on to a central radius server. In this case, because this is the Dutch situation, the Dutch top-level radius server. Would this have been a student from another country, then the Dutch top-level server would have sent these credentials on to even a higher level of radius server, the European top-level server. But in this case, since it is someone from University B in the Netherlands, the SurfNet top-level radius server knows where to forward the credentials to. University B radius server does know all about the students from University B, verifies it against the backend, gets an acknowledge back, so apparently the user entered the correct credentials. The whole thing travels back through this hierarchy, ends up at the radius server of University A. So basically University B tells University A, yes, this is indeed one of my students, so please let him on. So the radius server of University A tells the access point, it's okay, let this person on. And it can do a little bit more. That was these VLANs I talked about before. It can say not only let this person get online, but also put it in the VLAN that gives direct connectivity to the SurfNet network and not to any of my local networks. So please make that happen, and there the student gets connectivity. This is the basic operation of EduRoam. If you understand this, you understand EduRoam. Who didn't get this? One small thing I want to elaborate a little bit on. I mentioned it already, that the user credentials are protected, and that is only true if you use the right authentication methods. There are a couple of them. You can use it based on client and server certificate, ETLS. The problem there is that you have to roll out end-user certificates, and as far as I know, most NRANs in Europe have not been able to do that. I just heard that in South America they are able to roll out end-user certificates, so there they might take another approach. But for us it has throughout the years been very hard to get end-user certificates deployed. So what you see in most institutions is something else, and that's something that's called tunneled authentication. What it basically means is you set up an SSL tunnel, or TLS to be precise, an SSL tunnel to your end server through this radius hierarchy. Just like you would go to a secure website, the website presents its certificate, you know it's indeed your bank's website, and through this secure tunnel you enter most typically your username and password, and because of that the server authenticates itself to the user using a certificate, the user authenticates to the server using username and password. You have a secure mutual authentication. They trust each other. Nobody can see what goes in through the tunnel, so you have a safe solution. So where are we now? Well, we're doing well, I would say. EduRoam has been very successful. Last Saturday was actually the second birthday of EduRoam. I traced it back all through my emails, and the first server connected to the top-level server was actually last Saturday 2 years ago. The main boost was, I would say, about 1 year ago. Then a lot of countries joined, and the next boost is actually around now. Last couple of months, a lot of countries have joined. In Europe, the the majority of countries have joined. That doesn't mean that all institutions in Europe have EduRoam yet, but it's the first step. The top-level infrastructure is there. Now it's a matter of getting into the institutions. Currently, I put down about 350 institutions. Actually, should be over 400 by now, but we didn't do any new polls. The last time we polled was about 350. Australia has joined EduRoam, and the USA will follow in not too long a time. There is a test connection up and running already. They just want to figure out how to do it. They're a little bit worried about what would happen if all of a sudden hundreds of institutions would want to join. So they really want to be sure about the procedures involved, but it will happen. Most countries have a page, and we actually, new members, we request them to produce a page like more or less what you see on the left top. That happens to be the Dutch one, but most countries have something similar, a page where you can find, where you can get EduRoam connectivity. In our case, you just go with the mouse to a certain city and you get a list of all the institutions that are connected to EduRoam. And of course, I took the Amsterdam example because those are the most. So, are we done? Is it all ready? Well, unfortunately not. There are some limitations. As far as I can tell, nothing we can't overcome, but there are some things that don't feel completely right and that we want to fix in the next 1 or 2 years. There is the technology part. I am going to speed up a little bit. Otherwise, the chair will interrupt me. So, basically, on most of the various components of the whole infrastructure, there is room for improvement. Some things are more important than others. I mentioned before the policies are not exactly what they should be, and that is something we need to fix. On the technology basis, we are looking into, we now have this really static system, and we are looking into ways of making it possible to directly, for one university, to ask to another university, is this a valid user, yes or no? Now we have to go all through this hierarchy, back and forth all the time. So you introduce single points of failure, etc. But what I would say is the main problem we are facing now is that EduRoam, because we didn't set a lot of restrictions from the start, we just said, let it grow, let it happen, see what comes out. We now face the fact that EduRoam comes in many flavors. People make different choices for the SSID to broadcast, for whether to go for 802.1x plain or move already to WPA. Typically something you see that the first countries had only one choice, 802.1x. Newer countries joining or newer institutions joining say, well, why not go immediately for WPA? Well, that is something we really have to think about, how to make sure that when a user open its laptop, they will get access. I mean, that was after all the goal. If they then have to go and start configuring things and try out and it doesn't work and they have to go to the administration again to get it fixed, then we have more or less lost our goal. And then lastly, we want to see what is down, if things are up, and eventually we want to integrate it with this huge task we undertake in Europe to have a European authentication and authorization infrastructure. And in a way you could say that network access is just any other resource, so it makes sense to tie it as closely as possible with what we're going to build for getting access to applications and other services on the network. So where are we doing that? We are doing that in the GÉANT 2 project, and to be precise in JRA 5. JRA stands for Joint Research Activity, and this one is about authorization and roaming, if I'm correct that the title is nowadays. See no people shaking their heads, so that's it. And there are we going to tackle these issues that I mentioned before. Bypassing this radius hierarchy, I circled, well, something as close as I could get to a nice oval around this whole hierarchy of radius service. And what you have to understand is that this radius hierarchy does actually two things. It provides the trust fabric. The fact that you are into this hierarchy means you are to be trusted. And it is the transportation of the authentication credentials. It may make sense to take these apart. So for instance, to be able to, as I said before, directly connect to another university and say, look, here I have this user, is it a valid user? And by some kind of other mechanism, you know you can trust the other side. Don't know exactly how to do it. We do have ideas about it, and Henk Eertink is going to present on that later today in the last mobility session. Future Directions in Mobility it's called, and he will talk about alternative ways of setting up this hierarchical trust, for instance using diameter, the successor of the radius protocol, or, and that's the main topic of his talk, using DNSSEC to do exactly what I just described. Find the other point, and because it comes out of this DNSSEC, DNS part, you know that you can trust the endpoint. But listen to his talk if you want to find out more. Policy, I'm going to skip this actually. I've already mentioned that this is actually very important and we should look into this, but this you can, I think through for yourself. We really have to get all these things together, service level agreements, know what to do with incidents, etc. So the other thing, the usability perspective, that is where I think we have a lot to win. And I think it is not so much a matter of technical challenges as well as agreeing on sensible things. So as a group, we have to decide this is what we're going to do. We know there is no perfect solution. There is something to say for a number of solutions, but we have to pick something so that an end user knows what to expect. We want to make it a bit easier to find where you can get access. Now you have to go to a map and then to a city, and then you will probably get an address, and then you need to find that address, and then you can get online. What we want to do is also enable, let's say, the pull mechanism. I am somewhere, tell me where the nearest spot is where I can get EduRoam connectivity. Martijn Arts is going to talk about that more or less in the last presentation of this session. He is going to present what is called culture around the corner, but the whole architecture behind it also enables to do something like sending an SMS to a certain phone number saying EduRoam, and it will come back, for instance, with in 300 meters on this and this address you can find EduRoam access. And lastly, we can cover a lot with all institutions for education and research institutes, but not everything. So if we want to give the users this always on, always being able to connect experience, we have to work with commercial roaming operators. And the next presentation will be about one of those examples. UNIC in Denmark has struck a deal. What's the past tense of to strike? struck a deal with iPass that provides such a service where the EduRoam infrastructure is connected to the iPass infrastructure so that Danish can go all over the world, and wherever iPass has a presence, they can get online. Managing and monitoring, we are building all kinds of systems to have an easy way of seeing who is online, when did he come online, when did he get offline, what is his IP address, what is his MAC address, what is his username. More or less that. And of course, when something goes wrong, you want to know what goes wrong. Are all the servers up and running? Where does it go exactly wrong? Well, also there we have a number of ideas how to do this. We just have to work that out, and it will happen in the near future. Kostas Kalevras will talk about that in the next session, about one of the aspects of it, how to scale all these radius servers, how to make sure that there is failover, stuff like that. And then something getting really close to how many minutes?
Oh, no.
None? Okay. I'm going to really speed up then. How do we do more complex things like is this a valid username password, but also is this user over 18, or did he pass this and this course? Stuff like that. That is where we really want to integrate with this AAI infrastructure that is going to be built. Don't have to go into details because Diego Lopez will tomorrow in the AAI infrastructure session talk about that. I think, yeah, I'm at a conclusion, so not doing too bad. Just want to conclude with saying it is a good solution. I don't know if it's the perfect solution. Actually, I do know it's not. But it's the best we can do at this moment, and it is ready for the future. It works, and we will make it better, but it is there. You can use it. A lot of users are happily using it, so it is really to stay within the theme of GÉANT. It's a GÉANT leap for user kind. So if you are an institution or an NREN and you're not yet in EduRoam, I would say you really should join EduRoam ASAP, and all the people, approximately a quarter of this room is heavily involved in EduRoam, so ask your neighbor how to join, and if they are not able to tell you, come to me and I will make sure that we help you out. Thank you.
Could you, 1 second, could you wait for the mic?
What are the costs per year for an NREN?
That depends on which cost you're talking about. If you're talking, that is very expensive. It's free. So no, this is all a closed purse thing. If your users are allowed on my network, you want your users on my network, my users are coming to your network. Of course, there are plenty of costs involved. We have looked into that a bit. The additional costs for joining EduRoam are close to zero. You have to deploy a secure wireless LAN infrastructure at your institution. 802.1x makes a lot of sense. So you do that. And then on top, enabling guest use, it's, well, 4 lines of code in your radius configuration.
Oh, another question up there.
Good morning. In your architecture, does a user who has an account, is it able to, let's say, log in twice? And the reason why I'm asking this is, okay, we are using users and passwords, but students most of the time share their users and passwords with the other students or being without being a student. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, good question. I can give two answers to that. One is, that's not my business, because I provide the connecting infrastructure. This is a local institutional decision. The other answer, talking to a lot of institutions, is it depends very much. Some institutions say you have only one login. Others say you have 5. I don't know where this number is coming from, but one university in the Netherlands does do that. And some say, as much as you want. It's your problem. If you give your credentials to someone else, okay. But if they then start doing bad things, it's also your problem. So it is very much a choice of the institution involved.
Last one, are you using quotas or not? Quotas?
Quotas for what?
For the use of the service or not?
I guess someone else wants to answer the question.
It could be done, and we, for Croatian Academic and Research Network, we have done that. But, yeah, it's put a burden on your radio server, and we eventually decided it was a stupid idea and get rid of it. So it could be done, and if you want, we can share our experience with you, but I would strongly advise not to do that. Yeah. Also for the previous question, it was done for us as a rule on the level of the network, so you can log in at a point of a time only once, and the radio servers are taught to be careful on that. So it's part of the syntax, nothing more or less.
Okay, we are short on time now. Klaas, could you give one short answer on scaling? Is it okay or is it problematic? Just of your infrastructure.
It is actually very easy. That is something we discuss a lot, especially with the Americans. They are a little bit, well, I would say, hard on hierarchy. The fact that we have used a hierarchy makes it a very scalable solution. It works actually very well. On the top level server, we configure a country and we are done. On the national level, if another institution joins, you connect them to the top level server and all the other institutions in the country will automatically be connected basically to that new institution.
Okay, so thanks again, Klaas, for this very interesting introduction into the big project in Europe in mobility. And now I'm happy to announce Martin Bech from Denmark. He's from the center from UNIC, which is a center of networking for new services at schools and universities. And as Klaas already introduced, his point will be to incorporate commercial providers into such infrastructure.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, great. And then we need to find the presentation. Wow. Yeah, that's me. And I have a vision. The vision that we should be able to connect everywhere that we get by an access point. Of course, access points that allows users to connect, not private. I mean, that's hacking. But where we get by a hotspot, or even the wide broadband connections we find in hotel lounges or internet cafes or hotels, we should be able to use them. And also, old modem lines comes in handy now and then. We should be able to use local modem lines as well. And maybe in the future also other means of connecting like WiMAX or anything else that requires a subscription. And it should be easy to use, really. It should be easy to find the nearest hotspot, and you should pay nothing. And if you are to pay something, then at least you should only pay like for a minute, not for an hour. if you only need a minute. And again, when paying, you should leave the credit card in your pocket. I mean, this is the vision. Well, how close are we to reaching this goal? You've all heard about EduRoam. That should give potentially access to all of our own access points for free. But what about all the access points that are in airports or hotels or internet cafes or wherever, shopping malls, wherever we hang out that is not in a university or another of our connected institutions? Well, that should be done by making we've done that by making an agreement with one of the providers of such a service called iPass, and potentially we could have others join as well, other providers of access points. Now, it is also possible to unite the two worlds by having the same user ID and password, but still, I think I would not recommend that, but let's get into that. My proposal is to combine EduRoam and iPass to form a new annoying acronym called EduPass, which should be a service that encompasses or contains the two worlds in one. Let's just, for those of you who are not very familiar with iPass, I'll just give a short introduction. It's internet everywhere based on a local connection. It started off with many years ago with modem lines, and it still works. Also ISDN for those who really want that. And there's wired broadband in a lot of places, and the most interesting thing, of course, wireless broadband. And there's a lot of access points all over the globe. I'll give an address a little later where you can see where the access points are and so on. There's client software for Windows and Mac, so it's quite easy to... the only thing you really have to know is what country you've landed in. Then you tell that to the client, and it will sort out the rest and get you connected. And it's also usable without clients. For instance, for Symbian phones or Linux or some PDAs, there are no client software available, but you can use it anyhow. And we've made a description of how to do that. And again, it works in all countries on the planet, from A to Z, as we say. Let's have a look at here, downtown Oslo. There's all the spots up there is I think the red one is the one I've chosen. It's a coffee shop called Café Crème. And there you can see you cannot roam from one to the other. There's still some distance apart, but it's nice to know where to go in order to find your hotspot. You can also put in your position and have it found, and the address is up there. Otherwise, you can download my presentation and get out your looking glass. This is downtown Amsterdam, just to have another example. And the red one is actually a hairdresser called Cuts and Curls. So imagine having your hair done using your laptop. Well, I would prefer using a PDA, not to have to brush off all the hair afterwards. But it exists, and it's usable from iPass. Where I come from, it's the Danish research network called Forskningsnettet. Repeat after me, Forskning? No. Well, there we have implemented iPass for a year or so. And we've also developed a user administration interface. And I've upgraded my own career by appointing myself as administrator of all the colleagues. And there's an interface for that. And also I get, as an administrator of my fellow colleagues, the call data records of the usage records of all the colleagues. That is in the window on the right. There you can see in the top line, for instance, David Simonsen is a very active guy on using roaming, and the next one has only used the roaming service for the whole month of March for 97 seconds. I envy a colleague like that that can get all his work done in 97 seconds. And he also only pays for 97 seconds. not for a whole hour. Well, to be just a little technical, a user ID that you have to enter to an access point using iPass is composed in that way. First you have the prefix, and this is the general rule. There's exceptions to that, and that is handled by the client and described in a very 7 megabyte phone book of all the access points. If you are not using the client, you have to have the whole phone book about where the access points are and what the SSIDs are and so on, and that's published as well. So there are exceptions, but the general rule is this, that there's a prefix, so the access point will know this is an iPass guy. Then there's a use ID, this MBE something up there. And then there's what iPass calls the realm. And it just is basically a pointer to tell iPass what radio server they should authenticate users up against. And there's of course a password. And just to touch on security, iPass promises that there's end-to-end encryption between the access point and the radio servers. But of course, and in many cases, also the authentication process is encrypted, but they don't guarantee that. So you will be able probably to sniff an iPass user ID and password on using Wi-Fi sniffers and so on, probably. On some access points. On other access points they use SSL encryption and there are also other forms used. So, but in general you cannot be sure that it is not compromised. iPass, they offer a stronger encryption as an option, but that is but then you always have to use the client software, so it's at the expense of all our friends using Linux and so on. They promised, by the way, that a client will appear for Linux, but they promised that for more than a year. So, well, it'll be nice when it gets there. And then you can use the same hierarchy for EduRoam and for iPass, and we have done that back home. But again, and doing that, the users will never be able to sniff a viable user password combination for EduRoam, because usually, it is not practical to have exactly the same user ID in EduRoam as in iPass, and therefore you have to map anyhow the two kinds of user IDs against each other. You do that in the radio server or in a proxy. So no valid EduRoam user ID password combination can be sniffed, but of course you can sniff iPass user IDs and EduRoam passwords if you combine the two. And it's not very practical, and I think the users that need to remember two different user IDs will not feel that it's very comfortable that the password is the same. That's no benefit for users, and that's our experience. So maybe we'll change it. But that's just a recommendation when you are hopefully going to implement this. And normally, anyhow, you will use some kind of a VPN on top once you're connected. And what I propose is to buy iPass together. Instead of every country or every NREN doing it on their own, we should do it together. It will get us lower per minute rates, and there's a committed usage. If you want to have lower per minute rates, then you have to commit to some amount of usage, and that is in the order of 20,000 euro. But that's already paid. We've done that. Again, there's a fee if you want to have this so-called realm. You saw fsknet.dk, but if you want to have another realm, we propose to have one unified realm called EduPass. But if you really want to have one for your own NREN, then of course you'll have to pay something for that. And we also offer our backend. We have developed our backend administration interface and radios proxy and all that using open source components, and we offer that for all of you who would like to do a similar thing back home. And if we do it together, it will also be easier to develop a common client. That's another vision. To have a client that both knows all about the commercially available access points and the EduRoam access points. And that can, of course, is much easier if we exploit iPass service in the same way. Now, these years, there's a trend that NRENs are going to provide not only bandwidth, but services really to the end user. And I think this EduPass thing is just in the line of this trend. And I would say it needs the scale of a national network. Well, bearing this in mind, I mean, Denmark is smaller, as a whole country is smaller than some European cities. So in our scale, it's a national network, but still, at least it's a thing I think that will not be feasible for, say, a single university. You'll have to get the users to join in bigger groups, and I propose, of course, that you as an NREN do this. Because there's still, you have to set up user support, you have to have the radios infrastructure, you have to have the user administration infrastructure in place, and you also have to take care of the billing mechanisms. So that's why there's a bit of setup. On the other hand, this is a good service that the users really want to have, and they will commit to, because in the end they will pay for it, and this way you will get a nice service that you can use as a way to promote the other initiatives you may have on identity management. And I think that's a good placement for this iPass. And it's good for the NRENs, of course, but it's also good for the users. Bear that in mind. We've made a contract with iPass, potentially covering all terrain. Maybe I should turn this off. Doesn't help. Okay. We made a contract with iPass, potentially covering all the terrain countries. Doesn't mean that you could do your own contract. Of course it doesn't. But it means reduced entry fee and better rates, as I said. And I think doing this as a community makes sense. And once we make this working, we can go to the other providers of commercially available access points like Earthlink, America Online, AT&T, NetAway, and whatever they're called out there. So we propose to form a community of all the NRENs using iPass, and also gather a group of interested people together to develop a client that will unite the access of both EduRoam access points and all the commercially available access points. So, and of course this client could also, again, be made to run on all the platforms we desire if we put our minds to it. That could be nice. But again, only if more countries than little Denmark will join this initiative. So, if you want to join EduPass, come to me or some of the knowledgeable guys in TF Mobility. They know what it's about. And also, if you want to have test user IDs to try and evaluate this product, come to me. They're free, at least for a period. Yeah.
So, thank you, Martin. Other questions? There's one up here.
So you charge on a per second rate,
Yes.
and do you send that invoice to the user to pay?
No, you do that. The idea,
Oh, good.
the idea is that we provide the call data records so that you see, once each administrator that wants to be the administrator of his fellow users and create new and so on, he gets the bill and he creates users. He gets the call data records so he can maybe distribute the cost further on if he likes to.
And how much is the 1 second rate?
it varies from 0, also on the commercial access points, from 0 and up to several dollars a minute. That depends on where it is. If you go again to forskningsnettet, repeat after me, forskningsnet. Okay. If you go to our website, the Danish Research Network, you will see the complete price list.
So there's one up there, and then there are 2 questions here. No, not really.
Nowadays, we more and more see, let's say, wars between ISPs in order to differentiate themselves to, let's say, sell their services. We see some who are, let's say, offering free music, free videos, free games in order to differentiate themselves on the market. Do you think that, for instance, some of them may be using your systems in order to differentiate themselves, selling their services, saying, okay, we have an agreement with iPass. When you will be abroad, you can still use your traditional internet subscription to have roaming?
Well, there are a lot of internet providers, commercial, usually internet providers that have this iPass or other means of connecting abroad as either it's included, usually in the more expensive ones, or you can buy it as an extra thing. Okay, but using iPass, I don't think so. The other thing, a commercial provider of access points will maybe try to differentiate itself for a period by offering its service for free. We've seen that with Deutsche Telekom, for instance. They offered their access points for free for a period, as far as I know, and others. And if we combine a client, we make our own client, then we can take these kinds of access points in as well. But I don't think that we'll ever see iPass promotions. We haven't had that in the past, at least.
Thank you.
Can come with me? Give me your mic.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's the easiest.
It's a bit weird position, I have to say, but anyway. I wanted to follow up on the first question, actually. One thing we have seen in SurfNet over the years is that it has been hard to have services where you need to involve the universities in a relatively heavy way. We have had an ADSL service where the university had to do all the user management, had to connect the ADSL modem, stuff like that. And what happens usually is that either the users want it, but their university doesn't participate in this thing, or the university does it and the users are not interested. So we try to do as much as possible services where the end users can decide on getting a service like this. With ADSL we do that now. You said if you want to be the administrator of a group, you can be. How big does that group have to be? Can it be a group of 1? Or does it have to be at least 50 or 100 or 1,000?
The group can be as small as you like, even 1. But I think, but they will not want to register with, for instance, us in Denmark, because then they'll get support. Well, some of us speak English, but then usually they'll get support in not in their own language and not with any knowledge of their own networks and so on. It's not the right way to do it. No, you said that selling services to universities is a difficult thing. Either the users won't have it or the university will not have it, but the users will have it. How do you make do? Well, here you have an example of a service where both the universities can see the benefit, because this saves them money usually. They know, of course, that more people will use these kind of connections if they actually set it free. But still, modern universities tend to be okay with that. And the users want it. So here you have a good example of a service that you can actually use to promote, actually use to try to get universities to buy something, and that's quite unique. We have struggled with the same problem for years, and now our iPass for us has kind of broken a hole in the wall and given us an opportunity to actually sell something to universities, as well as getting registered, every single user registered.
The world of the wireless ISP is evolving and moving towards a sort of GSM infrastructure where you have, let's say, roaming between different ISP and also a single billing point. And don't you think that this model should evolve to support any kind of wireless ISP, providing that it has, let's say, the requirement related to security that what you want to have? Some organization might like to make an agreement with a different ISP and not iPass, maybe because the number of access points in a particular location is better served. Have you thought about this model?
Yes. Well, of course, my proposal here is about iPass. But again, if we develop a single access, a dialer client or access client for the users, that can also be made to know about some of the other examples I've put up there, Earthlink, America Online, and so on, that also provides access points all over the world. So you can do that. I think this would be a recommendation for, or this would be a wish or demand for this client software to have a configuration possibility, whereas you as an NREN could say, no, we don't want our users using iPass, or we don't want them to use any other service. And again, you have to remember that once you provide the user database, so it's also you that decides whether a user can use iPass, and we can have different kinds of service codes or other way to distinguish users that maybe one user will be allowed to use iPass, but not EduRoam. Could happen. And maybe the other way around for some users, and for some other users, maybe services, the additional services, you could put that into your radius hierarchy or however you are authenticating users.
Okay. The last question here, and then we have to go on.
Hi, Hans-Rudi Born, Switzerland. I have a question to the usage in terms of, do you have any idea of the ratio split between students and staff faculty of university using your service currently?
Well, currently it's only for staff employees at the universities. No university has yet accepted to have this service open for students.
Are they thinking about it?
Yes, in their nightmares.
Okay.
So,
but of course, if a billing model comes along, then it would be a good thing to do. But that will have to be established nationally or at the university level.
So, thanks again. Let's thank again the speaker for the interesting presentation. For the last presentation of this section, we have a little bit slide switch, I believe. It's Martin Arts, and you are an artist, is that right? You're a designer?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's actually a designer, not a technician, and he's the general manager of a company he founded, which is called Subwork. For me, I'm German, it sounds a little bit like someone zapping with a remote control. Okay, you will be presenting ways to identify hotspots, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, then.
Okay.
It's your floor.
Okay, welcome. My name is Martin Arts. I'm working at Zeebrugge, as the chair told. I'm not talking about Zeebrugge now. I'm talking about a project that we started, also funded and together with SurfNet. And this is my presentation. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Netherlands. Afterwards, I will tell you about the goal of the project and what is in all. I mean, this is a complete agenda, and we will run through it. First, the Netherlands. Because just a sec. I want to talk about this project Culture Around the Corner, which is not about access points, but access points will come in the story later. What you will notice. Netherlands is a small country. It's only 41,000 square kilometers, which I think is about the size of Denmark, but I'm not sure. Oh, sorry. It's 16 million inhabitants, which is a lot more than Denmark, I think. So it's a lot per square kilometers, and there's about 7 million households. But also in Holland, there are over 1,200 museums, and there's over 58,000 monuments. There's over 1,100 theaters and over 12,000, nearly 13,000 archaeological findings. So that's a lot. That's 73,000 cultural locations in Holland, which is about 5 per 1,000 inhabitants, or 11 per 1,000 households, or almost 2 per square kilometer. But you never know where they are. I mean, you know where the museums are because they've got large billboards in front of it, but you don't know where the monuments are. You don't know where the archaeological findings are. And what we wanted to do with our project is making Dutch citizens more aware of their cultural environment. So we wanted to show them how rich the country is. But the second goal was combining new technology with end-user exposure. What we feel as a company, we feel that R&D largely is too far ahead for the users to use. And what we wanted to do is making it more adapted to usage. Well, it could be simpler, but it must be more enjoyable. And the third one was experimenting with location-based services. Everybody talks about it, but nobody knows really what location-based services are going to be. What are going to be the cool things to do. So what we do is send information on nearest cultural locations on demand, so we do not push information only when they ask for it, to all possible mobile devices in every corner of the Netherlands. So we do not do it regionally, only in all of Holland, and hopefully later on all of Europe. But anyway, using any kinds of location detection. That is what our goal is. So, well, anything. My macros don't work on this computer, so I cannot show a lot here. I will continue then by using only the text version. That's sad. Maybe you could please look at www.cultuur in de buurt. It's on my presentation. You could see all kind of flash demos, which are also in the presentation, but don't work on this computer, sadly. But what it is that using your mobile phone, you can first dial star 120 and then hash or something to activate the location-based service. Then you type in museum or monument or archaeology or EduRoam, and you send it to 2020, and then you receive back an SMS saying where the nearest museum, EduRoam access point, or monument is. You get it by label and address. And then you can even call 0900 in de buurt, Cultuur in de buurt, it's Dutch. And you can retrieve more information, and that's done by voice XML. So a computer talks the stuff that is in the database. You can also immediately call the 0900 number to retrieve all the information about locations situated nearby. So what we also have, because we wanted to use all output channels and all location detection, we also were wondering, in Holland only Vodafone does location-based services based on cell ID. That's sad, because all the others cannot use this service. So we said, okay, then they just have to type in more information. But if they type in more information, it gets to be more complicated. So we have a very simple thing, and we said, if they type more, they get more. So we used MMS for that. So if you type in MMS space and then your location, then you get all the cultural locations with a picture showing a map of the surrounding that you're at. So that's MMS. The third one is Vodafone Live, but also all other mobile portals nowadays. It's iMode and all that kind of stuff. So you got mobile web portals where you can type in your location and you can retrieve all the nearby information. And of course, we have got a personal digital assistant and an interface specially adapted to that. And for this, we are indeed location detection based on Wi-Fi hotspots. And this is done by using the Jabber protocol. And it's real-time communication with a Jabber server that communicates the MAC address of the PDA as well as the access point. Later on I will come to that. The thing I want to show you, is culture around the corner, but you can't see it now on the screen. But I'm going to be more into the technology of this. What we built is an LBS platform. And this LBS platform, it simply talks to databases. Well, real-time or migrating data. It also talks to all kinds of output channels. It continues to talk to a location detection system as well as some web servers that are available on the web. We do not want to make anything new when you don't have to. I mean, there are several kinds of detection system and web services available free. And we just use them. We don't want to make it all over again because it holds up our project. So in order to fill this in, our platform is only connecting to all the other systems. It's a connector thing. So it connects to web services, it connects to localizers, it connects to databases, and that's all it does. The databases that are in it, our system now, is the database of all the Dutch museums, all the Dutch monuments, all the Dutch archaeological findings. So those are all partners for us. And by the way, they pay, together with some subsidies, they pay this project so that it's free for the end user. That was our goal, to make it free, available for the end user. On the output part, we've got SMS, but also MMS. We are looking at all operators. Only Vodafone is now location-based services, but Telfort is getting into this game, I think, soon. But also all the others can join in, but the users will have to type in more information. Also, we've got Vodafone Live, but nowadays all operators in Holland. And we also got, just the World Wide Web. On the system for location detection, we got GSM based on cell ID. So the accuracy is not so good. Within a city, it's about 200 meters accuracy. But outside of the city, it can go up to 4 or 5 kilometers. And this creates a strange thing, because I was in one small village next to a museum. I SMS'd museum, and I got the museum in the next village. So that's a disadvantage of this system, but telcos do not have a more accurate system nowadays, and we don't want to make their system better. We also got Wi-Fi location detection based on the location transmitter, the access point, which I'm going to go into detail just later. We left out GPS because it was too obvious for us, as well as the fact that nobody, not a normal user, has a GPS receiver in their hands when they're just walking in a city. Maybe later on that will happen because it will be in their mobile phone. And then we're going to, of course, also communicate with GPS. We're also talking to the European Space Agency about a Galileo project for this, which was also the starting point of this project in 2001 when the idea was conceptualized. And we are going on and on with new kinds of location detection systems. And the web services, well, it's just normal web services, geocoding, bounding box and stuff. So how does it work? I used the picture of Klaas, which he showed a lot of times, he said, and I'm going to use it also. So we've got, it's a very technical scheme. It's far too easy for you, I think. But anyway, you've got a supplicant and it is in a cell ID. A cell ID is around an antenna. It connects to the network. They give it on to a SMS and MMS gateway. They pass it on to us. We ask the telco if it's good to use their location because they have got their privacy settings. They look that up in their database. They get a yes. They pass on their location and their mobile number. We look through our database with points of interest, and we do a spatial query. It's rather easy because it gets back all the stuff that's needed for the SMS, and we send it back through the network. Well, that's fairly simple, and the other one is probably also very simple because this is the way the Wi-Fi location detection works. You've got a PDA or a laptop, and it connects using an authenticator. It wants to connect to the internet, and through the internet it connects to a Jabber server real time. So it passes on the MAC address of the access point as well as the MAC address of the user. They send it on to us. We send it back to a central radio server, and they will look up in their database filled up with access points where the access point is situated, the longitude and latitude. They give it back to us and we look into our database. They do a spatial query. We get the nearest locations and it gets sent back to the applicant. It's really fairly simple again. But what is missing now? These are the parts that are missing. There is no central Jabber server or network of Jabber server that communicates like this. The culture around the corner is, well, it is now available, but it wasn't. And the access point database wasn't available. There was no database filled up with all the access points with their locations. So in this project, we are building those. So also what is missing, also with the picture that Klaas showed, you got a computer and a wireless network. And you got a PDA with a wireless network, or you got international connectivity. But without access point, you've got no access. And until now, you cannot do any roaming because, as Martin Beck also showed, there are some access points in a city, but you cannot walk from one to the other without losing the connectivity. So you have to look for everything. Therefore, the location-based detection of our system is not so very good now, but we can use it in another way. What we did is, okay, you send an SMS with the EduRoam, you send it to 2020 in Holland, and you get back the nearest access point locations. And then you walk there, and then you have access to the internet. As Klaas said to me just before the presentation, he said, well, let's hope that not all access points will be mapped out on the map, because then this service is not needed anymore. But I said, well, but then our location detection does work. So we are on both ends of the story, because it is our goal to just make cultural locations, but also access point, new technology, more available to end users in a simple way. And in the end, we can use any kind of device, using any kind of location detection in every corner of the Netherlands, or maybe even outside of the Netherlands, and give them their free information, free cultural information, or free access point information. I will run through this because it's, those are our content partners, those are our access partners, and those are our technology partners. And the first one is SurfNet, which was kind enough to grant us a small grant, or you could so call it a large grant also, but just to fund our project in the beginning. I can get into the near future, and then my presentation stops. But the near future is as broad as the horizon can be, because we can get, for just small parts, we can just build like Lego, build our system on and on and on. We are also having a cultural weather map now, which shows where the most cultural locations are, kind of like those building blocks. But what we are going to do is expanding voice services, expanding services for culture tourism. We do want this especially because until now an SMS with the nearest cultural locations is more like a culture snack, which is not so very functional. But when you have all the events or all the access points, it will be very functional. But also for culture tourism, if you have a round trip in Rotterdam, that shows you where you have to go to and what architecture to see, then it will become more functional. We're also going to include GPS. We are starting to look at RFID. We have a small R&D project for that also. We are setting up nature around the corner and sports. And we are going to decentralize content management, which for most companies and institutions, like, for instance, the Department of Conservation in Holland, content management is a very expensive job. They've got their 58,000 monuments, and they have been working on it for 1.5 years to connect it to the internet. It didn't work. They can't do it because, well, I don't know, company policy. But in this system, they are available on the web, and they can do decentralized content management. So we just want to fly by all these policies and making it available. And also we want to decentralize web services. Therefore, we have made a free service on the web where you can enter your own zip code and you get a culture map of your surroundings free on your own website. Just cutting and pasting a small piece of code in your own website, and you can show the map of your cultural neighborhood. And last one is founding a non-profit institution, Culture Around the Corner. And that was everything.
Thank you, Martin. Other questions? Where's the mic? Ah, okay. Maybe we start with you because it's coming.
Hello, Per Torbel from UNICE in Denmark. It's a very interesting service you have established here. Could you tell me a little about the usage numbers? How many people are using this service? What are the most popular services? And in what areas do you see a lack of interest for the very different services you have here?
We have got statistics on all use, and the uses of SMS and MMS, it's like 0 to little. I mean, not many people are using MMS is too far ahead, and SMS, it is popular, but only when you have got a campaign running. So because we don't have any communication campaign, we just have free publicity until now. The usage is just a few SMSs per day. But as I told you before, until now it's only a culture snack. And we are expanding that, and we are also having a project proposal for the Dutch Ministry of Culture and Education, and there we are hoping that they will support us in our communication. The website, however, that is visited like really a lot. It's thousands per day, just using the website and looking into what is in their neighborhood. So what you can see is that, as I told, we want to make new technology available for normal use. What you can see is that even SMS, MMS, and PDA is even a little bit too far. I mean, it's the web that people use a lot. And SMS is what they use as kids for voting, but not functionally. So it's growing really slow. And what we see is, those are the statistics, and those are the way. That's the way how the people adopt it in Holland. But I do feel that if you have a good communication around it, and we are now talking to a large newspaper and those kinds of offices, if you have got a lot of communication using that, then it's going to be a top-of-mind service, and then they are going to use it. So we do feel that it's a little bit a mix between early adopters and being too early, as well as having too little communication.
Okay, next question.
Yes, David Simonsen also from UNIC. Being an EduRoam guy, I think it's a very elegant way to actually provide, for instance, the nearest EduRoam access point. But the scope of your work here is Holland, and EduRoam also, looks into international roaming. What are the possibilities of having a unified SMS service? You have 2020 for your services. Could it be 2020 in Denmark, the USA, Japan, everywhere?
We want to do that. We are now working on the UK and Belgium, France, Switzerland and Italy, because I did a small presentation just a month ago on also an international conference, and then those countries were interested in joining up. But in order to get it running in another country, you have to do some things. First, we have to make an agreement on how to deal with the data. We can either import it anonymized or import it in total or some kind of like that. So, and that's fairly simple. We just use a CSV and we import it. It's easy as that. Then we've got all the points of interest or access points if needed. And the second thing is you have to have arrangements with the telco, and that's in every country that's different. So in the one country it is charged a lot, and they don't have 2020, and in another country they do. But as we are starting now with the UK and Belgium and France and these other countries, we hope to have as soon as possible this service available in other countries. But it's also rather cheap because if a country wants to join in, we ask every content partner to pay for the costs that is specifically for them, and most of the times it's reduced to under 5,000 euros. And the usage of the system is paid by all contributors, all partners, and they pay only 250 euros a month. So that's what we charge. And the costs of this system in Holland now is about 1,000 euros per month in total. So if you got 4 partners, then in a country you can run it.
There's another question.
Carmelo Zaccone from awt.be. When one talks about location-based services, 2 things came in mind. The first one is, oh great, it's really handy and useful. But the second one which comes is, what about the privacy? For instance, when I access a service, I would like that only the service I access right now knows my actual situation, my actual location. And for instance, that nobody else can sniff the network or sniff the information and get that information. Yeah. The second one is, I do not want that information is being recorded, like for instance with cookies and creating profiles of location where I am and so on, and can go on like that. What do you think about this?
Well, we have thought about it a lot because the first telco in Holland that did location-based services wasn't Vodafone, it was Telfort. And they started up their location-based services using the friend finder. So you could find your friend. And then immediately they got a setback of over 2 years because they got in the newspaper for bad publicity because of the privacy. In Holland, your location is your own copyright. So my location is owned by me and no one else. And if someone wants to use my location, they have to ask me. That's the same for location-based services based on cell ID and also for Wi-Fi. So therefore I have to activate the location-based service for Vodafone using *120 hash. That's a general okay to location-based services. That's a general okay. But the regulation in Holland is getting more and more advanced now. This will not happen in the near future. Probably you will have *120 and hash and then the name of the service that you want to use. Something like that. On the other hand, the failure of Telfort was the reason for us to use Culture, which is a friendly service, to do only pull. So the user asks for it and then we send it. So we don't do push because we could give the user something like that. If he walks past a monument, they get an SMS. But we don't do that because also that would create bad publicity. We don't do any user profiling until privacy regulations is more advanced. And the Wi-Fi part is more interesting than the cell ID part. Because on Wi-Fi we are specifically using Jabber because you've got loads of Jabber clients. And with Jabber clients you can personally say, okay, I want to have that friend or that service, or and I want to have my location or my onlineness available to him or her or that service. That's why we use the Jabber. So it's really a good thing, and you've got to not be too advanced because then you get bad publicity and then you get bad privacy protection.
Thank you.
Yes, since you don't have really an accurate location of the person making the request, how do you make the explanation of the location of the object to find?
Yeah, it's also what we do now is that we don't do it. I mean, you send an SMS of, for instance, you send an SMS of museum, and the nearest museum is 2 streets down the road there. But if you're a tourist, you don't know that. You just get the name of the street. We don't have a solution to that based on SMS because you only have 160 characters, and you can have a solution like you enter your start point. That's what they do in Vodafone Live in Street Guide. You enter your start point also, but then it's not detecting anymore. Then it's just typing in your location. So on SMS, on mobile portal, we don't have an accurate solution to that because the screen is too small. Using voice XML, you can do it, but that's what the first next step will be, expanding voice services, because then you have to tell your location, but also then you don't have a location detection. So we don't have a solution as long as the location detection is not accurate enough. When it is accurate enough, you can really easy get routing information just out of a web service from a GIS web service deliverer, a service party. because they have that already. So.
Okay. Then let's thank Martin again and all the other speakers. And